According to the latest data released by USDA and compiled by the U.S. Meat Export Federation, 2021's beef exports are on track to set new records in both volume and value. In the first 11 months, the total volume shipped was 1.32 million metric tons. That's up 16% from a year ago, while the export value increased more than $2.5 billion from a year ago. Beef exports have been outstanding in recent years, and that's due in part to the work of NCBA. And joining me now is Kent Bacus, NCBA's Senior Director of International Trade and Market Access. Kent, we just talked about the outstanding numbers that were posted for 2021. What's fueling and driving all this international demand?
Well, I think when you look at our success over 2021, part of it was due to tight global beef supplies. You have, weather conditions in some major beef exporting countries that really restricted the amount of beef that was available for consumers. And you also have a lot of, animal health issues in countries like China. So that creates shortages. That means that you have very strong demand and limited supply. So because of that, that means that we're going to see higher prices. But for us in the U.S. beef industry, I think one of the best things is the fact that we're able to capitalize on that demand because we had good trade policies in place. Because we were able to eliminate a lot of tariff and non-tariff barriers in those key markets, we've been able to capitalize on them and really drive more value for our U.S. cattle producers.
You talk about key markets. What are some of maybe the untapped markets that we haven't fully capitalized on just yet?
Well, I think, China is, we just established a footprint there. We have our foot in the door, but we've barely scratched the surface. And even though that is quickly becoming a $2 billion market for us, I believe that it could really become our top export market within the next year or so. But there are other strong markets in Asia. Taiwan, we've seen a lot of growth. Philippines, we've seen just tremendous upswing. And as these consumers want more of that high quality U.S. beef, I think we're going to be in a very good position. But it's not just Asia that we're looking at. We're also looking for potential opportunities in Africa, but also in the United Kingdom. Now that the UK is no longer part of the European Union, they're trying to take a more science-based approach to trade. That's a very sophisticated consumer class there. And I think that once we're able to build that trust and gain access to that market, it could be a very good market for us.
So help our viewers understand what NCBA's role is in fostering this international trade.
So one of the key things we do at NCBA is we work with the U.S. government to provide technical support. So letting them know how different policies, how different regulations, how tariff and non-tariff barriers impact our producers and impact every segment of the supply chain. And by being able to put a real world approach to that and help them to understand how these policies will impact us, it helps us put the right kind of policies in place. Unfortunately, our industry has been the victim of a lot of trade politics throughout the years. That's why we were banned in China for 13 years. That's why we had restrictions in both Korea and Japan. But through trade policies, through working with our government, we're able to eliminate those barriers so that we can gain that trust and really build trust with those consumers. So NCBA provides a lot of information, not only to the government, but also helps producers understand how these trade agreements are going to impact them. And so we really are kind of that conduit to share that information and to make sure that all these decisions are based on facts, based on evidence, and on science, and they'll be the most beneficial for our cattle producers.
That's outstanding. Now, NCBA obviously is a policy-driven organization and it's grassroots-driven. Having said that, what do you foresee as some of the key priorities in terms of international trade as we move forward?
Well, I think one of the big priorities that carries over from the previous year is reauthorizing Trade Promotion Authority. We need Congress to do that. And Trade Promotion Authority is one of those pieces of legislation that tells our negotiators what the priorities are. and really empowers them to go and negotiate on behalf of the U.S. government. The agencies can't just go out and do that. They have to have the blessing of Congress because the constitutional authority lies with Congress. So we need Trade Promotion Authority to set those guidelines and to really show a united front throughout the U.S. government. That's expired right now. That doesn't mean our negotiators can't go out and have conversations, but it doesn't provide that same kind of certainty. So we need Congress to re-engage. We need Republicans and Democrats to work together to reauthorize TPA. And from that'll serve as a foundation to go out and negotiate more agreements, hopefully one with the United Kingdom and some of these other markets.
You mentioned trade policy several times through this conversation, and I'm curious, why is it so important for producers to have a voice in crafting and creating that policy?
You know, it's a common saying in NCBA that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And there are a lot of groups out there that are interested in shifting, in shifting the cards so that they're stacked against cattle producers. One way they do that is through trade policy, by putting up protectionist barriers, using non-scientific justifications to restrict trade, whether that's through some food safety claims that aren't supported by science, or by saying that our production standards aren't up to code. So it's important for us to engage, to tell that story, to show that what we're doing is the right thing, that the methods that we use that for animal health, for animal welfare, for sustainability, that all of those are top of the line, that they're science-based, and that should be the foundation. It's important for producers to be able to engage on that, because we need to make sure those rules are fair. Right. But we also need to put a face on how those policies are going to be applied. We need to show who could benefit from this, and that's really why producers should care. It should be involved, because at the end of the day, we want to be able to sell all those cuts of beef to the highest bidders wherever they are in the world.
Right. Great point. And talking about the highest bidder, thank you for all you've done in order to generate more value for the U.S. beef industry. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Every day, NCBA staff in Washington and Denver is working on the issues that matter to cattle-producing families all over our country. Join in the fight for our industry's future by becoming an NCBA member. Just call 866-233-3872 or visit ncba.org.